Yeah, and we'll assign the dates at a later date.
Okay, we're live.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, ready? Okay, good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session, which will be followed by a public hearing shortly after. For April 1st, 2020, the 10 a.m. session.
Can I,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
this is we're holding these hearings on April 1st and 2nd, but this is actually the March.
March 17th, sorry, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you want me to read each one?
Read the adjournments, withdrawals, yeah.
Okay, so the following items are submitted for adjournments and withdrawals. 2409BZ, 7810 164th Road, Queens. 2016-4149BZ, 500-508 Van Nest Avenue, The Bronx. 2017-272BZ, 10-1946 Road, Queens. 2019-74BZ, 112-51 Northern Boulevard, Queens. And for withdrawal, 2016-1215BZ, 142 West 29th Street.
Right.
So do I go to the next calendar?
Now just to the 10 a.m. calendar for today.
Right, and then,
We're going to be hearing for the 10 a.m. today.
right, so the special order calendar, 75178BZ, 215 Northern Boulevard, Queens. 2019-185A and 2019-186A, that's both Fletcher Street in Staten Island. 2019-303A, 55 Eckford Street, Brooklyn. And 2016-4264BZ on the zoning calendar, 194 Moffett Street in Brooklyn.
Right. And so if your case, for those of you listening, if your case was not listed, we're going to either hear it this afternoon or tomorrow. And you can see on our website, we have posted those calendars, right?
The calendars are posted and also the call-in numbers.
Right. Okay. So we can start the review session for that morning session then.
Okay, so this is the review session. And so 2409BZ, 7810 164th Road, Queens. So that's being adjourned.
Wait, no. Wait, stop.
Oh, sorry. You want to just go to the regular cases?
Or 75178BZ, right?
Oh, start with that one.
Adjournments. So we
We
know
already did-
the adjourned cases will be assigned adjournment dates independently, which will be mounted on our website. Okay. So
Okay, so
the review session, just the 10 a.m. calendar, starting with 75178. Right?
so continued hearings, 75178BZ, 200-15 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
Okay. Okay.
So we are adjourning because we don't have proof of service, or?
We're not adjourning this.
Okay,
This-
fine.
Actual review session, right? This
Okay.
is not a new case. This is a continued hearing,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
200-15 Northern Boulevard, Queens. Okay, so prior to this hearing, we have a new letter from the Auburndale Improvement Association dated March 14th, asking that the tires not be allowed to pile higher than the height of the wall. You know, this thing with the tires has been going on for a very long time. I actually don't see how we can ever enforce this, even if we make it a condition. The association also mentioned something about a traffic cone near the eastern wall and debris between the 43rd Avenue wall. The applicant submits more photos with tires shown stored outside along that wall. It's kind of my opinion, but I just don't want to prolong this. The storage of tires outside was not permitted under the last resolution, and that condition was ignored. Now the business is trying to institutionalize what was prohibited the last time. And I don't frankly understand this. We came up with many solutions to keep them stored inside, and they've refused all of them. They have this container on the site. The tires could be stored in the container. We suggested building another enclosure for the trash, and they built this oddly shaped enclosure, which they still haven't corrected. And the tires could have been stored inside of that. I just don't understand why this can't be done. But so anyway, all I can say at this point is that if the neighbors and the civic association are willing to take on the task, they're the only ones who can report on whether the tires are being stored below the level of the wall during the day, and that they're being moved back inside. And so it makes them the police on this case, which, if they want to take that on, it's not typical, and would mean that they would bring it back to us for a compliance hearing in the future. A condition of storing tires up to a certain height is not really practical. So I'm going to, oh, wait a minute, sorry, I'm not on the right view. Recognize Commissioner Shanda. Just a second, let me unmute. There you go. Go ahead.
I think the solution here is the most practical here, as it can best be for a site of this small, a site that is this small, which is, we typically don't see such small site being used for auto repair, and it's been used as auto repair for a long period of time. And I think the applicant has been trying to do its best within this location to work with the board and also address the community concerns. And I agree. I mean, it is not to what extent this can be, the applicant would continue to meet these requirements would to a large extent rely on the community board, but I do think the applicant is also being responsive, and since is on notice that the community is very watchful of every action that they take, and the civic association here is quite active. So to some extent, we just have to let this organization and the community be aware and watchful, and the applicant to be respectful of the community and the community's request. That's where I leave it.
Okay, Commissioner Otley Brown.
I do agree with you, Chair, that it would be practically impossible to enforce a condition that is as nebulous as tires should not be stacked higher than the wall, because it's not something that is actually measured. And throughout the day, aside from having somebody sit there and snap pictures every second of the day, there's no way to know whether or not they're going to comply. I think that we could suggest to them that you'd be a good neighbor in complying. But the only thing that I feel that we could do about this is to at least ensure that upon closing, there would be no tires left overnight outside. That's something that we could actually insist upon, and that might actually have some sort of teeth. But I agree that you're probably going to have to leave it to the Civic Association to police tires as high as the wall and come back and request a compliance hearing.
Right. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sheta.
I have to acknowledge that the applicant was kind of cooperative with us. We asked him to read the gap between the container and the fence. They did. We asked them to paint the wall. They did so. And the last issue is the tires. I have two things, one positive and one negative. The negative thing is I did ask them frequently to give us pictures for the interior storage location or the racks inside where they put the tires in, and I never seen these pictures.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing is they provided this submission showing that the storage is just up to the fence, the fence is painted, or the wall is painted, and it sounds like the conditions now are much better than before.
Mhm.
If I have to say, I hate to like give the board's authority to like make sure that something or somebody is complying with the conditions. I have to say, I hate to give it to somebody else, whether it's an association or the neighbors. If we can like come up with a solution for this, and the applicant cooperate a little bit more to ensure us that the storage is going to be up to the top of the wall and nothing above that, I would love to do that. And I believe that could be done like very simply. They could put some rods in the wall at the top of the wall, some like steel rods, like half an inch, drill them in, put one rod like longitudinal. This is like, it's not like a ceiling, but it's kind of a limitation to how high the stack can go. That could be like a very cheap solution. And in the meantime, it's gonna ensure everybody that stockpiling is not gonna go beyond the height of the wall. Which I like, I would say it's gonna most likely happen, because I don't think they can stack higher than the wall without like putting some sort of support for the tires not to fail or to fall on the other side of the wall outside the property. But you know, we want to people look at it and be satisfied that yes, it's not gonna go higher than that. So I would drill like every a foot and a half maybe, because the tire is like 45 inch. I'm sorry, 18 inch. So every like 18 inch, like in the middle where they put the tire, I would drill like half an inch steel rod into the wall and just leave it like that. And this is gonna limit the height of the storage.
Yeah, so I'm
Other-
concerned with that one, but I want to recognize Commissioner Shabeta, and I see Commissioner Shanda's hand up. What I want to say about that is, first of all, the history of this site is that the tires have been stored haphazardly above the level of the wall, so they're able to balance them without any kind of framework. And the thing that I'm concerned about with the rods is when there's no tires in that location, arguably overnight, they present a real hazard, you know, that somebody could be playing around in that front area and smash into the rods. It's different than a tire rack, you know, that where you can sit on it, as opposed to rods that are projecting out. That's just my comment, but let me just recognize
They
Commissioner.
could, if you're concerned about that, I would say they could put like even 1 inch angle at the front of these rods, and it's done. The entire solution is very cheap. It's gonna probably take like 2 hours of a guy who can drill, put the rods very quick, weld the angle, done in 2 hours, very cheap solution in the meantime, and safe in the meantime. And it's gonna assure us and assure everybody else that even if they wanna stack the tires higher than that wall, it's not gonna work.
Mhm. So you're basically talking about a built-in tire rack. That's effective.
It's not, if you want to call it like that, I'm okay with it. But using the wall, it's not like an independent rack. It's like using the wall as the major component of that rack. The rest is like probably like 10 pieces of 12-inch or 18-inch rods, half an inch diameter, and a piece of steel angle that could be 1 inch, could be even brought from, I don't know, maybe Home Depot or any steel supplier, and just weld it at both ends, and probably 2 tack welds in the middle. I bet it's not gonna cost more than probably $200, and it's gonna be done. They cannot stack any tires like above that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Shabeta?
Okay, with regard to the rods being placed in the wall, I I believe that if they want to stack higher than the wall, they're going to. They very well may just push the tire rack, their tires back 2 inches. And I don't think they need a wall to balance the tires out. So it could still be higher than the wall, just not placed up directly against it. But I do agree with the chair. If we put this in the resolution, we may get the results we want because this is a very active community. And if they continue to bring this back, it's going to cost the applicant money. And at the end of the day, that's going to be the factor that forces them into compliance.
Mhm. Okay. All right. And Commissioner Shanda, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Commissioner Shibata's statement is that that whatever measures taken, if they want to stack it up, they can stack it. It doesn't have to be against the wall. It can be next to it and it can be higher than that. So, but I think also the other concern with the rods and other is that, you know, right now we're looking at certain kinds of tires. The construction, the tire heights and widths and all of those things vary depending on the needs and the demands. And I think this civic association is extremely active. We have seen them time and time again. They have never missed a single hearing on any item that's in their neighborhood. And I think the applicant would be wise enough to be respectful of this community and the association. I would say for all applicants for that matter, and be respectful of this, I would say, kindness this association has given and to allow them to stack just up to the height of the wall and be respectful of that.
Mhm. Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay, so this is a review session, right? I want to note that I see sitting in our waiting room on Zoom, I see 2 names, Jay Russo 1 and John. Neither, unless one of you is, you can't be staff because we don't have anybody named those things on staff. So if you are in the waiting room, you need to hang up. This is a review session and we will not be recognizing you. You only call in when we're discussing your case. And at the moment, this is only executive session, so we're not going to recognize any testimony. So please hang up, Jay Russo 1 and John. Okay. Okay, we can go to the next one.
Okay, 2019-185A, 57 Fletcher Street, Staten Island, and 2019-186A, 53 Fletcher Street, Staten Island. Can I just mention, Madam Chair, that we received, oh, you changed it, okay. I just received another email. So the fire department has no objections to the application.
Okay. So the application and drawings were amended to show that a waiver of the front yard and front setback requirements will be required under 72OG, although the zoning resolution sections were not referenced. To make it easier for the applicant at the Department of Buildings, they need to provide the reference numbers for the sections in the zoning resolution that are going to be, that need waiver. I believe, but really the applicant needs to check because I don't want to make a mistake or have the mistake travel on. I believe it'll be section 23-45 for yards and also maybe 23-631 for height and setback in an R2A. That needs to be specifically shown on the drawings that that's what is the waiver is. The plans that we received weren't signed and sealed, so they must be signed and sealed. And we had also been promised the approved builder's pavement plan, which I didn't receive, which I didn't see in the folder. And as I didn't know, so it was supposed to be the approved builder's pavement plan. We had, I don't know if we had any actually. Okay, so, but otherwise, I think there's no substantive issues. Those are the things that just needed to be corrected. So there's nothing left that's substantive. And since we on these Zoom videos don't do closed votes, we can take that following time for them to complete the submission. Okay, Commissioner Shanda.
I had no additional comments on the zoning calculation
Okay, or anything else?
or any of the other matters. Yeah, I agree with you with regards to the waivers.
Okay, thanks. And Commissioner Otley Brown?
I have no comments.
Okay, thanks. And Commissioner Sheta?
I have no additional comments. Thank you.
And Commissioner Shivetta?
Nothing further from me on this.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, next item is 2019-303A, 55 Eckford Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, sorry, just one second. We have a new letter from the Department of Buildings, March 11th, stating that the permit was lawfully issued, never revoked. Obviously, a lot has happened since the last hearing in early February in our world. Construction has stopped and the economy is in recession. Values and cost estimates provided as part of this submission no longer hold. It is likely that this site, I have to say, will remain as is, unfinished with no near prospect for development. So I think the questions here now are different than they were in February. Will this contract vendee, this is a contract vendee who's the applicant, move to close given the situation? Yeah, so it's like kind of a whole new world. Deeds were provided, but not the one for the foreclosure sale to 55 Eckford 1875 DNB LLC, who is apparently the current owner. So we don't actually, that was a foreclosure action. We don't see any ownership in the chain of title by the current owner. And would need that. As requested, though, the applicant submitted a brief of the case law related to the abandonment and recoupment prongs set forth in the Putnam-Armonk decision. Appellant urges that the window for review should only be the time since the board last allowed the permit to be renewed in determining that the vested rights that had been accrued in 2005 should continue into 2014. I disagree that that is the time frame. We're looking at no work done since 2006, that's 14 years, and the repeated transfer of ownership at least 3 times, and now with this contract vendee, potentially 4 times. And now with the situation of a likelihood of a stalled site situation to continue. So surely vested rights have to come to an end at some point. The brief doesn't pursue this line of argument as it provides no case law dealing with the subject, which had to do with how long those vested rights last if there's been no action except transfer of property. I found one case, Deo v. Hagen, which actually talks about abandonment. It says, while it may be said that as a general rule, the mere passage of time is insufficient to constitute an abandonment, and usually an intent to abandon must be evidenced by some overt act. It has been stated that a protracted period of disuse unaccompanied by circumstances which belie intent to abandon may be regarded as abandonment. So I'm not sure what the circumstances were that belie the assumption of abandonment here. As with the vesting renewal application that we denied on the basis of abandonment, we did have one. This one has ECB violations and fines that indicate the site has not been maintained. And so I'd like to know, how is this case different from that one? The only thing I see is that in 2016, a permit was issued to allow the installation of pipe scaffolding. I'd like to know whether that work was done. Can the applicant demonstrate that the owners continued to maintain the property and respond to curing violations? Because there are many violations on the site, though I believe a lot of them were paid. So because we said we wouldn't move forward unless they were paid. So those are my comments. I'm recognizing Commissioner Shanda.
Okay. Based on the cases the applicant has provided, I really did not have any additional comments. I did not see that the site has been abandoned. At least that has not been, the case laws have not been very clear, but at the same time, for example, the city of Binghamton court case in the city of Binghamton did indicate that the time is not the essential element of abandonment and non-use of the property over a period of time. This site, unlike the other site that we had seen in Brooklyn, this site does have a fair amount of construction. The other site hardly had any construction, and whatever was done could have been was nothing almost. Here, there's a significant amount of construction that has happened that is, I think, is already over the permitted underlying bulk. So whatever, if there was abandonment, there wouldn't have been so much of exchange of hand in some ways. I mean, there's been a desire to want to construct or do something with it. And it's just the timings. And unfortunately, we are in one such time period where that work may not proceed because of the current situation we are in. But that would not, and there could have been other financial and other things that may not have resulted in the construction happening in a timely manner, but that doesn't mean an abandonment. So I'm okay with this project. I really don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Commissioner Otley Brown.
Hi, I am not convinced that this site has been abandoned, and I read through the brief, and it doesn't seem from the brief that this site has been abandoned simply because it hasn't had any more forward motion other than sales. The zoning resolution it seems to be silent on the requirement of constant progress, aside from just satisfying the initial substantial work and substantial expenditures. It doesn't speak to a need for constant increase in the amount of work and expenditures done to continue to vest. So I'm not on board with removing their vested rights at this point in time. However, that being said, I am concerned about the fact that even though the contract vendee entered into an agreement, they still had tax liens sold after that, which to me indicates the possible inability to finance the project in the future if they can't even meet their tax bill. So those are my thoughts on the subject. As for the serious loss breakdown, they did more of an analysis about the different parts of the serious loss and what it's made up, with the largest being the loss in market value. And I think that they documented that well by giving us a listing of sales and showing that they were using a very conservative $1,100 a square foot to estimate the value of the floor area that would be lost, when the condo sales prices ranged from 1,300 to 1,700 square feet. So I felt that, okay, at least that was pretty conservatively done.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain again, what is there about the tax liens?
They had their tax liens sold recently, like I think this last go round, which indicates that they weren't able to pay their back taxes.
Mm-hmm. But who's responsible for paying the lien? Isn't that the current property owner?
Right, the current property owner. So I'm not sure if the contract vendee took on part of the responsibility that they would pay it. It certainly would be in their best interest to pay it, even though, if they're moving towards owning the property, simply because once the liens are sold, it's going to cost you quite a bit more to purchase them back. And also then the clock is ticking on them foreclosing on your property or taking it, like the city taking it over.
Okay. I see. Okay.
So though, and that's just an added question that I had.
Mhm. Right. So, I mean, just in relation to this subject, we are looking at probably this site going into a stalled site program, just continuing, because that's what happened in 2008, which is approximately when this whole story started. So they'll be back, right? And it'll be as a result of this whole economic situation. So,
True, but I don't know that we should hold it against them.
no, I'm just saying there should be some, I think there's, assuming that there's support for this, I think there needs to be something in the resolution that recognizes the time period so that when they come back in however many years, it's not held against them, because this is the equivalent of 2008, when it took 5 to 8 years or even longer for projects to get online again.
True.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Sheta.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I was concerned about when I started reviewing this case is, like you said, too many changes since we last looked at this case, and the economic situation now is kind of, it's against them. We're not going to hold it against them. It's against them from the perspective that if they want to continue construction, that's going to be very tough for them to do so. So
Right.
I became more sympathetic with them than the other hearing. I believe, I'm not tending to believe that they abandoned this site is abandoned. I believe the amount of construction done so far is qualify them to continue. What I'm thinking about is two things. I'm gonna ask them to explain to us when they come before us today, what is the plan to move forward, considering the new economic dilemma. And the second thing, I want to, we all think about what we can put in our resolution to make sure that this site is not going to stay in a standstill condition, until 4 other years or so. And if this happened,
Yeah.
what could be done to
So I'd have to say, being in week 3 or something like that of the situation, if they could predict what they're going to be doing with this site, they should open up a radio program to predict for the entire planet what's going to happen and how they're going to finish their project. And for us to put any kind of caveats on them finishing their project, it's again, we used 2008, where we saw that it was between 5 and 8 years for buildings to be completed. A lot of them came back to us after that. And that's how long it took them to finally get funding and finally be able to continue. So
my bad. Maybe I misspelled it. I didn't mean that. Give us a plan. How you gonna finish this in 4 years? No, I didn't mean that.
okay.
What I'm saying is, give us a plan. How you gonna be prepared for different scenarios, even if you're not gonna touch this site for a year or two. Just we want to get some sort of assurance from them that if things become better, we're willing to move forward with that side and put this on record. So if let's say things get better in a year, medically, in a year, it's pinky. And they show up in 4 years from now and because of the conditions, we weren't able to move forward. If we don't have feedback from them today, we're not gonna have something to like say, oh, you said this and you did this. But even if they come today and say, if things became like 2008 for the next 4 years, we do not anticipate that we're gonna be doing anything on this side. I'm okay with that.
Okay, okay. Because don't forget, this is the contract vendee who's the applicant. The applicant is actually not the current property owner, even though, and that's allowed, right? I don't know if this contractee vendee is going to close the sale. This is, I'm not a force majeure expert. This might qualify to get out of a contract. I don't know the answer to that. So, okay, I'm going to move on to Commissioner Shabeta.
So I appreciate the brief. I wasn't entirely convinced by it. I do believe you can lose your vesting rights, and the way that brief was written, it seemed like it's not something that happens. But that aside, I'm trying to think what's the best practical solution for this case. I'm not sure that dismissing their application would be better for this, what is this very obvious eyesore in this community. I wish we can say, I'm frustrated by it because I wish we could say, okay, let's give them a long adjourn date and see if any progress happens, but we know that that's not going to be the case now. You know,
Right.
I really don't know what the best outcome for this case would be.
Mm-hmm. Other than to kick the can down the road till we're out of
Right. Yeah, I would say that kick the can down the road. I would be cautious in the way we draft a resolution, because I do believe that an argument can be made for abandonment here.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks. Anybody else want to add any? Oh, Commissioner Shanda. Okay.
I think Commissioner Shabeta raised a good point, and so did you, all of you. From what I've heard, I think in our resolution we need to be very clear and state that if there anything that related to site safety issues, whoever is the person, whether it's contract vendor or anyone else, they need to ensure that the site is maintained in the safe condition until financially or whatever however we term it, that they're able to resume construction. And should they fail, maybe that would be an indication of them losing their vesting. Maybe that would be one way of coining it, because those should not be that expensive of an issue. And this also, as Commissioner Otley-Brown pointed out, if there is more such violations and if it's in tax lien, this will just force the site being taken over by the city. So they need to kind of not just keep fighting the tax lien by paying a little bit or do all kinds of other. I remember learning about it when I was at HPD, but I don't know the full detail of it, how those are handled. Mm-hmm. But maybe that's one way of putting some fire there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Commissioner Otley-Brown.
To give a little more clarity about the tax liens, if the tax liens are sold, then the tax lien servicer is who then would be the person that the owner would negotiate to pay off the tax lien. Mm-hmm. If it's not negotiated within 1 year, then the tax lien servicer can sell off the property. Right. So the city won't take it, another private entity would take it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that correction. Yeah.
Okay. So this site already was through one foreclosure. I don't know whether it was a tax foreclosure or a bank foreclosure, but you know, the current owner purchased this in a foreclosure sale of some type, and the vendee is now purchasing it from the purchaser through the foreclosure. So we do have a mixed situation, which unfortunately is likely to be of a site that is very troubled, is likely to be foreclosed on various levels, and we'll see again, you know, in 4 years or whatever. And I agree that the site has to be maintained safely, But what do you do when you have a property owner who is incapable financially, especially now, right? That's happened in 2008. 2008, so many projects were essentially wiped out because the lenders all disappeared. And so the owner of at the time period was foreclosed, and then there were these kind of fire sales all over the city, all over the world, frankly. But yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Anybody? No? Okay, move on.
Zoning calendar, item number 10, 2016-4264 BZ, 194 Moffett Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, with that one, I saw there was a submission this morning. We can't look at any last submissions on this YouTube, I'm sorry, the Zoom video YouTube hearings. We only can look at the submissions as we have them. And then any kind of changes could be discussed at the hearing, but we can't consider last minute submissions. It's really impossible for us to manage that. Before I go on with that one, I just want to say that we have two people sitting in the waiting room. This is the review session right now. One person still sitting in the waiting room is Jay Russo 1. And now we have Arash Makani sitting in the waiting room. Both of you need to hang up and just watch the video because you will not be recognized to speak during the review session. So please hang up and just watch us on the video. Okay, so in terms of this case now, Moffett, at the last hearing, we were struggling with the A finding and assuming we could find an A, the neighborhood character and minimum relief subjects. The building height has been reduced to 31 foot 4 inches, the FAR to 1.79. The floor area to 5,729 and the unit count to 8 small units from 10. The As of Right project revised an office plan with 2,111 square feet usable on a 3,200 square foot lot, which I think is a very huge loss factor for a one-story building. I'm not understanding that at all. When you rent out an entire building for your office, you pay, actually the rent goes to the middle of the sidewalk. So, or even maybe the middle of the road. There's some strange calculation factor. So that rent calculation is very wrong. The uniqueness study provides a chart showing 13 vacant lots in the M11, stating that there are only 3 actually vacant lots, but excludes the parking lots from the count. Including the parking lots, there are a total of 5 vacant lots. If viewed separately, each of these is 20 feet or less in width. If viewed in combination, then there is only 1 20-foot wide lot and 2 32-foot wide lots in the M11. One lot is 40 feet wide and the balance are wider. So given the rarity of small vacant lots in the study area, I think the site may be unique. However, as is always the question, does that uniqueness cause an insurmountable hardship? The submission does not walk us through how the 32-foot width of the site, which is the claimed hardship, impedes development of a conforming office building, which is a viable use and doesn't have the type of truck dock needs described in the statement of facts for manufacturing uses. We saw recently a similar application on DeGraw Street, that's for the applicant's benefit, 2018-53-BZ. That was for a 35-foot wide site, so 3 foot wider than this one, with an excellent layout for an office that took advantage of the deep lot and mechanical deductions to create a 2-story building with a central courtyard to provide light to the rear portion of the office, which is ideal for use by many types of creative offices. So I'd like to know why this one would be different. Plus, as I said, the 3,200 gross square feet is all rentable and there's no waste since it's all usable by a commercial tenant. In addition to which, a cellar located just 50% below grade with a clear story windows would be rentable, usable space for an office user, especially if you excavated the rear yard to align with the cellar floor level, as is being done with the proposed residential project. In this, for the residential, the rear yard's only being excavated to a certain depth, but of the yard, but it could be excavated all the way, which is very commonly done. And I don't think the office uses are incompatible with the adjacent residential uses. Most of us live in areas where there are offices right adjacent to where we live. And frankly, I'd actually be more sympathetic with this application if the ask were for a little more floor area for the conforming use, as opposed to this ask of both use and what is effectively a very large floor area increase. With respect to the elevator in the building, fair housing and ADA laws require accessible units in the building, which they're providing at the ground floor. But if this is to be a multi-unit building, if we were able to get past the A finding, which I'm having trouble with, I don't like the idea, as I said at the last hearing, of allowing the creation of inaccessible units in multiple dwellings that benefit from a variance. That means that no one can be disabled in place or age in place on those upper floors. And I'm very much opposed to allowing those kinds of developments on multiple family units. The units that are proposed are very small and awkward, especially the one bedroom at the rear. And this is already a building with a full cellar as compared to the neighbors, that a 3-story building with a full cellar as compared to the neighbors, which are 2 stories and a cellar. So isn't this site put in a better position than its neighbors? In addition to which, it's being built much deeper than the neighbors. So these neighbors are really narrow buildings. And the building height was brought down, but the parapet is taller than necessary because it's measured off of a 1 foot 10 inch thick roof. So it seems to be higher than the adjoining properties. And then we did receive the final EAS and final approved RAP and CHASP. And those are my comments. So I go to Commissioner Shanda.
Thank you. I have reviewed the revised uniqueness study, and based on the review, and I think I was comfortable with it before, I'm glad to see that they've made more improvements and an analysis. And the uniqueness study shows that in the M1 district, the narrow lots are developed with residential uses, 2 to 3 family, 3-story homes, and the wider and the larger lots are developed with conforming manufacturing uses. The narrow lots developed with residential use have lot widths less than 32 feet. The lot widths range between 16 feet to 25 feet. The subject site is 32 feet wide upon merger of 2 narrow lots. The combined width does make the site better positioned than 5 lots that were identified to have lot widths less than 32 feet. However, of these 5 lots, only 2 sites, lot 23 and 24 on the subject block, come close to being similar to the subject site. Lots 23, 24 are under single ownership. Combined lot width will be similar to that of the subject site. But the subject site is different from these 2 lots. Currently, there is one business and auto body repair that is and it has an existing structure occupying both lots, and that I'm referring to lot 23 and 24 that was built in 2005. The uniqueness study reveals that there are only 3 vacant sites, including the subject site and the subject 2 lots, I would say. The combined width of the subject lot is much less than that. Is much less than the only remaining vacant site. So in my review of the uniqueness study, it meets the uniqueness finding. With regards to the building design, I'm glad that they have reduced the height of it. I still remain concerned about the layout of the units and such small compact units that are being laid out. This is a very typical residential family type home. So I'm not sure why these units are laid out in a manner that is going to be more like a studio kind of spaces. I had one comment with regards to the ADA questions, Madam Chair, you had raised, and this is based on what I recall from my days at HPD, was that if you have a multiple dwelling of certain number of units that is less than I think 10 or something like that, there's a percentage of units that has to be ADA accessible. And typically, when we used to have that kind of situation, we used to achieve that by having ADA units at the ground floor. So the ground floor units would be ADA accessible from the street level, and the rest didn't, because the requirement of whatever that percentage was being met by the number of units that were on the ground floor. Now, if they're proposing to do that, they need to show that analysis.
And they are, the percentage, right, but they are showing ground floor ADA units, whether or not they're I did look up the code, but I just don't have it in front of me. I think that they meet the minimum standards for the number of units in the building because they have at-grade units. I think there are 3 on the ground floor. But my point is, assuming I could get past the A, I don't agree with having facilitating the development. Excuse me. Facilitating the development of a multifamily building that is not completely accessible, because it's different if you're building something as of right. But I don't agree with the idea of getting a benefit and then not having the units being accessible. We see too often, just among our own friends, we see people who are injured and now they can't get to their second floor apartment or third floor apartment. And so, right. And so I just don't see that it's correct for us to be allowing this. It'd be one thing if we were just talking about a 2 or 3 family house. That's a different thing. This is 8 units. Could you repeat your layout comment? I didn't understand that. You said that.
So this is a concern I had from the last hearing also. I thought the units were laid out in let me just open the plan. Give me a second. Sorry. I think the unit layout on the first floor seems reasonable. It's once you start going to the second floor and above, the second floor has 2 units. No, it has studios, 2 bedrooms, and 1 bedroom. And once you go upstairs, okay,
The second floor has 3 units, 1
yeah,
2 bedroom, a 1 bedroom, and a studio.
sorry, I think I was reviewing the older plan, so that's I was still referring to the older plans. I think my concern is that the studio unit that's there, this is packing in too many units in this small place.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
And
the living room, like if I look at the unit in the back that has 1 bedroom, the way the kitchen is laid out and the bedroom and living room, we're not here to design anything, but it just does not result in a very habitable space. I mean, the living room area is 9 foot wide. Typically, we hear variance cases where people make the argument that a 9 foot wide living room is not a habitable living room space. It makes therefore the unit unfeasible, not feasible. And here the applicant is proposing a 9 foot wide living room. And so, I think just the layout itself is not a desirable layout.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Otley Brown now.
Hi. Yes. As far as the uniqueness study goes, it wasn't clear that they took into account all of the lots that were vacant but used as parking, because it seemed like there were a few more that were narrow but were used as parking that were not included in the study. And that would make this site not as unique as they're alleging. I think they need to include everything that has some kind of an outdoor parking use or outdoor storage use similar as being vacant, because those lots are really vacant lots where the property owner is just trying to get some kind of income without having to invest any money in the property, which would be what this person is going to do as well as of right.
Mhm.
So that's my thoughts on the uniqueness. As to the financials, they redid the financials and they made some changes that we requested to the construction costs. They lowered the warehouse by 25%, and they lowered the community facility and the proposed, not by 25%, but they brought it down a little further. But what they did do that we didn't ask them to do is they reanalyzed the industrial leases and the community facility leases and lowered them both from the previous report. And I don't even know why. And then in the office scenario, they then attributed the new lower community facility leases to the office scenario as well. So that's troubling because we didn't ask them to lower those things. However, your statement that the rent should be for the entire 3,200 square feet for the office, they did do that. They did assign rent for the entire 3,200 square feet, even though they showed us layouts with the little common walkway. They're paying for it, so to speak. However, they're paying a lower price in the financials than they would have been paying. So that's problematic because that affects whether or not the as of right office might actually be viable. With me just doing a quick, back of the envelope mathematical equation, it looks like if we restored the rent to the $26 a square foot from the first report and applied it to the 3,200 square feet and lowered the cap rate to about a 4.5, that scenario would work. I think they should reanalyze it and just give us the analysis back and let us know what they think about that. But so I'm not really convinced that an as of right won't work at this point. As to the proposed, I'm not quite sure how we jump to even their reduced proposed scenario of 1.79 FAR, because number one, if you look at I had a chance to look at their neighborhood character study. What they're proposing is not in the neighborhood character. On that block, you've got what looks like 1 and 2 family row houses. That's what you have. I don't know how you get from a 1 or 2 family row house to a multifamily small apartment building. So that's my character comment. And then when you look at the financials, although they say, oh, look at us, we're using a 5.7 cap rate and the application seems to even out, it doesn't even out. Your value is 200,000 higher than your cost, which suggests that the cap rate, the return is actually higher than the 5.7. They're just not calculating it for you. So I think they could definitely go smaller if we get to that point.
Okay. And in terms of the hardship driven by the potential uniqueness, if there was a uniqueness.
I mean, if you're looking at the layout, I don't know if it's a uniqueness, because a unique hardship, because the bottom line is smaller lots have smaller properties on them. Does that make that a hardship that you have a 1-story office building that's literally going to be neighborhood offices for a bunch of doctors, maybe like a pediatrics practice or something? Does that mean it's a hardship?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not convinced of that.
Okay.
I certainly don't see their whole proximity to the MTA argument, because they're way too far away from the MTA and the LIRR to be able to claim that in my book. even though they may have to at least submit some information to them to say that we're about to start constructing, I don't see that they're going to have the same issues that we've seen with properties that are like 6 feet away from the train tunnels.
Right. Understood. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go to
Mhm.
Commissioner Shetta now. Is that it? Is that everything?
That's it for me for now, yes.
Mr. Shetta?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will start from where Commissioner Otley Brown finished. On the TA issue, I believe they backed off on arguing that this is giving them any kind of like hardship or burden. It's gonna cost them some money to get through the TA or LIRR. It's $150, and most likely I bet we're gonna get a letter of no objection. So it's not a big deal at all. The other issue is in the cost. I'm okay with the construction cost estimate, except for just one item, which is the environmental remediation. They plugged in like 50 grand, exactly 47 and change, for they call it special cost for environmental remediation. I'm not sure what kind of environmental is needed there. I was wondering how is, like, with this construction cost, how come the as of right project is still not feasible? It sounds like I just got an answer. Probably it's not the construction cost. Probably it's the value, maybe that's got exaggerated. But other than that, I believe the proposed is kind of like excessive. The FAR, the number of units. I don't know why they would reduce the number of units and make the units like more attractable. Like on one of the units on the third floor, one of the bedrooms is just 8 feet wide, 8 feet and 2 inches. I'm not sure if this is something that we want to like sign off on. 9 foot 2 inches, 8 feet 10 inches, and I don't see reason for that. The other thing I would love, and I believe they did put some information in the submission that they made today. I did go through that submission very quickly, but not like in detail. But I would like to get like some sort of comparison between what they are proposing and the adjacent properties. Like Commissioner Otley Brown said, the majority of the block is like a single family or 2 family houses. So I don't know why we're seeing 8 units and initially it was 10 units here. What is the FAR prevailing in that neighborhood? What is the side yard compared to what they are proposing? All these kind of things. We want to make sure that if we buy that this site is unique, and if we buy that this site has a hardship and it qualifies for a use waiver, we want to make sure that we do not grant something that's going to be favored more than the existing like legal non-complying properties. I hate to do that. So I would urge them to submit to us what is the FAR in the adjacent properties compared to their proposal, and in general, what are the zoning parameters for their proposal as compared to adjacent buildings.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Shabeta. And I see Commissioner Shanda has a question.
Okay, I think that they need to go back and they need to redo their A argument. I do appreciate Commissioner Shanda's statements. I didn't see all that from their analysis. I think that they should really go back and try to explain how this uniqueness is causing them this hardship. That aside, I want to second what Commissioner Otley Brown stated. This is their ask is not in line with the community. They could, and nor is it in line with an E finding. They need to, if they want something, if we get past the A, I wouldn't be comfortable approving something that is so out of line with everything around them.
Mhm. Anything, is that it? Anything else?
That's all.
Okay,
That's
I'm
all.
going to recognize Commissioner Shanda.
Actually, my comment was with regards to the MTA, and Commissioner Sheta did respond to it. They're not factoring in the MTA cost.
They're not, okay.
They're not.
Any other comments? Oh, Commissioner Otley Brown.
They aren't factoring it in, but the financial analysis does talk about it. And really, it should just be taken out. It's like, oh, this poor property, they're within 200 feet, they're still going to have to go through the approval process like it's a hardship, even though they took the costs out. So that's what I was responding to. The costs are out. The whole argument should be out.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else? Anybody? Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this concludes the public review session for April 1st, 2020. We'll now commence with the public hearing for April 1st, 2020, 10 a.m. And these are for cases that were originally calendared for March 17th. So the meeting ID number is 591-125-015. And the password is 055263. The call-in number is 1-646-558-8656. You should call in when you hear your case. These are the adjournments and withdrawals. Item number 1, 2409BZ, 7810 164th Road, Queens. Just keep calling them.
Yeah, just call all the adjournments and withdrawals.
Okay. 2016-4149BZ, 500-508 Van Nest Avenue, the Bronx. 2017-272BZ, 10-1946 Road, Queens. And 2019-74BZ, 11251 Northern Boulevard, Queens. Those are the adjournments. The withdrawal is 2016-1215BZ, 142 West 29th Street, Manhattan. Do you want to vote on that? Or just, it's withdrawn? Request is withdrawn.
Oh, I see. Okay, yes. I just want to say though, before we do that, if your case was called as an adjournment, we're not going to be discussing it any further. So, and we will assign a new date and let you know what that date is, and that date will be posted on our website. So call again the one that is to be withdrawn.
2016-1215BZ, 142 West 29th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, so for a motion to withdraw,
Chair Perlmutter,
aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
All right.
Okay,
That's been withdrawn.
those are withdrawn. That's withdrawn. Special order calendar, continued hearing items, 75178BZ, 200-15 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
Okay, so I see now in the waiting room, on the Zoom waiting room, I see 3 people in the waiting room. The only person who should be in the waiting room, therefore the others should be hanging up, is someone who is calling in to represent or speak about 751-78BZ. So I see the names Arash Makani, Rocco Basile, and someone with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 806. If you're not calling about this case, 200-15 Northern Boulevard, please hang up. The only person who should be, and there's also, we have John, which don't know who that is. So the only person who should be calling in is somebody here for 200-15 Northern Boulevard, Queens. This is Rothkrug. Does somebody know who? Please hang up if that's not your case. Okay, one more chance. We have Rocco Basile. Is that a person related to Rothkrug? I don't know. Or someone with the last digit 713. And or last digit 505. Any of those people calling in right now, please hang up. If your case is not 751-78BZ, if you don't hang up, I'm going to recognize you and you will be speaking about this case. Okay, I'm about to, okay, people are hanging up. Okay, I have now 2 people in the waiting room. So the person with the last digit 713, I'm going to recognize you and you better be calling in about 200-15 Northern Boulevard, Queens. Otherwise, hang up. Oops.
Hello.
Hello, yes, state your name.
Good
please.
morning. This is Todd Dale from Rossburg Inspector.
Okay.
Sorry, I tried to send an email to Tony to say what my number was, but
You know what would
Oh, I
help?
just saw it. Sorry. I'm sorry, Tom.
no.
Oh, now your name is appearing. That's good. But, you know, it would be really great if you can join the Zoom program, then we'll be able to see your name appear. I think Kurt probably
Okay.
right now it shows your name because Kurt jumps in and changes the identification. But it would be better if all applicants, regular applicants, join Zoom video, then you don't need to show your face if you don't want to, but we can at least recognize your name. Okay.
Understood. I will better download the Zoom software, and I have no problem showing my face.
Great.
Okay. So good morning. I did hear the review session. I apologize. The YouTube video, I might have missed the first 30 seconds of discussion. So I'm not sure if there was anything else, but it seems as if tires are the primary issue.
Yes.
And I can definitely speak to that. First, I was going to provide a little history and context, and then also perhaps suggest a path forward. The first thing I would want to note is, Chair, I know you were not at the last hearing for this, but at previous hearings, we had provided photographs from actually the 2014 application for which our office was the representative. And I know it's not clear from the resolution that was issued from the previous grant, but the issue with the tires primarily was not just tires, but there used to be some permanent tire racks that were stored outside in the parking area. Large, tall, probably 8-foot tall tire racks that were out there permanently, and tires were chained to those racks overnight. I don't know if anyone recalls those photos, but we did present those photos, and those were removed in conjunction with the previous approval. The reality is that there are no permanent outside storage of tires. If you look at the photograph from the last submission, you'll note that there's no structure on those tires. There's no chains on those tires. They are brought in when it's not business hours. And I believe actually Mr. Euler in his most recent submission, on the second page of his most recent submission, which was in February, he notes that it's the overnight, he specifically, I think, references in his letter that there's not overnight storage of tires, but it's the fact that when they're out during business hours, they extend higher than the wall. Okay. All right. So,
wait, can I interrupt you, Mr. Dale?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I apologize, Madam Chair. I did not swear him in.
Yes, true. Okay.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Can I swear him in now or just let it go?
No, swear him in now and we'll have it apply retroactively.
Sorry, Mr. Dale. So
No,
do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond on board member questions?
I affirm going forward and everything I previously said.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay. So in any case, back to Mr. Euler's letter, when he noted there, you'll see actually it's under point 1. He actually references during business hours, tires are piled up by the eastern wall. We have spoken to both the property owner and the tenant. We did submit the most recent photo. Up until I was in home lockdown, our office is actually near the site, and I would drive by. And I have to say, since that last letter, the times that I personally drove by, they did not extend past the wall height, and there also are brought in overnight. So I just wanted to provide that as far as context, as far as the tires. It wasn't just tires generally, and I realize that's what the resolution says, but unfortunately, the photo that I handed up at the last hearing, I realized we did not submit officially to the record, but I don't know if any of the commissioners who were at that hearing recall those tire rack photos that we showed that really were the source of the issue back in 2014. With respect to going forward, I would note that we would, and I heard the discussion about enforcement of conditions and the difficulties the board has here. I would say two things to this. First, we agree that Community Board 11 is a very active community board, and the Auburndale Civic Association is very active. We have a good relationship with them. Our office is about 2 minutes away. So, we understand that they'll check on this. As far as a condition going forward, we would agree to a condition in the resolution that says absolutely no overnight or no storage of tires in the open lot outside of business hours. I think that would be more effective than any arbitrary height condition. I think, I know there was discussion about the rods being put into the wall. I mean, this applicant has demonstrated a willingness to do work on the site, whether it's the dumpster enclosure or whether it's the wedges behind the container. We could put the rods in, but I don't think that they would be effective in the sense that I don't know if it was Commissioner Chanda or Commissioner Shibata who noted that you could just move the tires away from the rods. We're also concerned that the rods then could be used as a means to chain the tires to the rods, and create sort of this artificial tire rack that was removed back in 2014. So I don't know if an overnight condition would be agreeable to the commissioners and the board, but we would 100% agree to that, because really what they do is when it's not business hours, they park cars outside and store tires inside. And when it's business hours, they bring the tires out and they put the cars into the bay so they can work on them. And it's really just a back and a forth. And they've really tried to limit all the tires that they have on site. They have a limited number of the most popular tires in the storage container on site, but they really just order far fewer than they used to.
What Mr. Euler's letter talks about is the effect of the tires being piled high over the wall, which is why they
Right.
tires low, so you don't see them from the residential properties on the other side of the wall, right? So I think that seemed to be quite important to them in terms of the overnight, in terms of the daytime activity versus the overnight. I want to recognize Commissioner Shanda, who has her hand up.
Thank you. I think as Mr. Dale was describing the situation, by not having any structure, I do agree that this would also be a preventative way of and disincentivizing the owner from keeping the tires outside, because it can be stolen if you keep it just exposed like that without being chained or being anything. So you're forced to have to move it and close it off after business hours because you don't want them to get stolen. Because this facility has no other enclosure of any sorts. It's completely open and accessible to anybody. So I would agree that by not having any structure just makes it a strong incentive for the owner to want to have to keep these structures, these tires indoors during off business hours.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other comments on this one? All right, so anything, we do have hands raised. Commissioner Otley Brown. And then
I just want to say that I am sympathetic to the owner in this case. I just wanted that noted for the record. And I agree with Vice Chair Shanda.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, and then Chief Daly. Just a second, trying to unmute you. There we go.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Hearing your discussion regarding enforcement, as you're aware, the fire department does conduct annual inspections of these auto repair shops. That whatever the board decides, the resolution will be made part of the fire department records, and we will conduct inspections and enforcement of all BSNA resolutions. Thank you.
Great. And Commissioner Otley Brown, your hand is still up. Did you want to speak again? Wait a second.
Oh, I'll lower it.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, and then, Mr. Dale, did you want to add anything? Because I think Mr. Euler is actually in the waiting room.
I would say just that we would agree to an overnight condition, no non-business hour condition. We would also agree to a condition not to store the tires higher than the wall. As was discussed, I'm not sure how that would be enforced, but we agreed to it. And I can just say that, since the last hearing and since Mr. Euler's last letter, we've really, in my experience driving by, I've seen them really try to comply with this. Admittedly, I have not been there the past 2 weeks, so I don't know what the current status is.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other comments from commissioners? Otherwise, I'm going to admit who I believe is Mr. Euler in the waiting room. Last phone number. Oh, we have Commissioner Shanda who wants to say one more thing.
Just want to say we are not going to put a condition of Mr. Dale's office not being relocated. That's not a condition we can apply.
Okay. Okay, so I'm admitting phone number 505.
Please state your name. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. State your name, please.
My name's Henry Euler.
Oh my God, how are you, sir?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Thank you for calling in and participating in our televised conference hearing. So go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Henry Euler. I'm first vice chair of Auburndale Improvement Association. I've been listening to the review comments this morning and to what Mr. Dale's been saying. It's very important to the community that the tires not be going up beyond the height of the wall. It really detracts from the community, and we don't want to see that. We're trying to have a nice, neat community where everything is kept clean and nice looking. And I don't think it's too much to ask for them to limit the height to the height of the wall. And we only want to see the tires if they, we're trying to go out of our way to cooperate with the business. And we understand that they have needs and that they need to have their tires handy. But at the same time, they're not a separate entity operating on their own. They're part of a community, and they need to be cooperative and respectful to the community. So we would like to see the tires only stored on the eastern wall, no higher than the height of the wall. Mm-hmm. And if they can't comply voluntarily, we'll be continuing to watch, and we will have no choice but to ask for a compliance hearing if the tires are not stored properly during the day. They are stored at night away, which is great, and we're thankful that they're reducing their hours of operation. So I think we're doing we're working with them, but they need to work with the community as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments on this one? So I think we can, because we don't do, Mr. Dale, as you probably learned from the last hearing, we're not doing closed votes on these televised sessions. So we close and then we set this up for decision on another date. So I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter?
Yeah, wait a second. We need to unmute everybody. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, motion to
Go.
for me.
Okay. A motion to close has been requested. Vice Chair?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Okay. And so we'll set this up for decision on another date. We'll let you know what that date is. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I note that I don't see on the video the posting of the dial-in number, unless I'm not looking at a YouTube channel. If it's possible to post the dial-in number on the video, don't know. So can you say what the dial-in number is before each case?
Sure. The number is 1-646-558-8656. And the meeting ID number is 591-125-015. Password is 055263 if you're doing the Zoom, I guess.
Mhm.
And a toll-free number is 1-888-475-4499.
Okay.
Okay, so the next case is, oh, sorry.
Mhm.
2019-185A, 57 Fletcher Street, 2019-186A, 53 Fletcher Street.
Okay, so if you are the applicant for this case, 2019-185A, 57 Fletcher Street, please dial in or connect to Zoom video. I don't see anyone in the waiting room.
Okay, hopefully he can call in. He was trying. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Okay, great.
Is that Timothy Boylan?
Good morning, yes.
Hi, good morning. Let me, this is an A case. You don't need to be sworn in. Go ahead. Okay. Turn down your YouTube a little bit.
All the way, actually.
Yeah.
Mr. Boylan, you have to turn
Yes.
down, turn off your YouTube.
Yes, done.
Okay. Okay, please proceed.
Good morning, this is Timothy Boyland, VMB Architecture Urban Planning on behalf of the applicant. I just want to start off, number one, thank the board and the staff for providing this mechanism to keep the applications moving forward. I know it's not an easy task to do. Very appreciative of that. We did review, we listened to the review session. The chair's comments were acknowledged. We're prepared to provide those materials very expeditiously in a matter of a couple of days by email and also via mail. If you're taking incoming mail, we'll do mail.
Mail
for
is
hard
not
copy.
being accepted at the office. It's closed, so email.
So email, okay, sure. We'll do that very expeditiously. One clarification I'd like to make is that in the earliest submission of the application form, there was a typo on our part that said R2A as the zone. We've corrected that in follow-up submissions. Somehow it's continued to follow when the calendars are printed up, it continues to say R2A. I just want to confirm that it's an R3A site.
Okay. Oh, yes, it's showing us on the calendar, right?
It
Okay.
still says R2. Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
Just make sure that all of your paperwork is showing it as R. And so hopefully our council should make note that it says an R3A, just in case. Okay.
Okay.
Noted. All right. So are there any comments from the commissioners on this? Okay. Are there any speakers waiting in, listening to the YouTube video who would like to speak on this? I'm sorry, Tony, can you repeat the dial-in number for anybody who might want to speak?
Sure, it's 1-646-558-8656. And the meeting ID number is 591-125-015. If you're calling in the Zoom, 0055263. The toll-free number is 1-888-475-4499.
Okay, just giving it a second. Okay, because we don't, Commissioner Shetta wanted to say something. Yeah.
I just want to mention that the dial-in numbers and the meeting information are on the video on YouTube, right
Oh,
below the
it's
video.
showing up. I can't see it, so that's all.
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just wanted to put it in the record. They are there.
Appreciate it. Because I was watching just on the BSA site and it wasn't showing up there, but I did go onto the YouTube channel. Okay. All right. So with this one, the only issues that are remaining are kind of more housekeeping, so not substantive. So I would like to make a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
I'm waiting for you to unmute. Okay.
Yeah, unmuted.
Okay. Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta. I can't hear him.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. So we will set a decision date for this as soon as we can. We may create a special date for decisions just to kind of move these along, but we need the submission. So we'll give you the date and the submission date. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Thank you. My computer is frozen, so we can proceed, but I need to shut it down and turn it on again. I won't lose you here because I'm working on two, but I won't know what's going on for a while. So, all right.
Call the next case.
Yeah, you can call it. Yeah, you can call the case, but I just won't be able to.
Look at your notes. Is that it?
Yeah, that's the problem. So,
Okay. 2019 303A 55 Eckford Street, Brooklyn.
okay, so we're looking for a call-in or joining Zoom video for, there is one person. There we go. We have Sandy Agnostou,
That's not Sandy's case.
right?
That's Sheldon LaBelle.
Oh, sorry. I just admitted Sandy, wrong case. I'm gonna not admit, how do I get rid of her? Nothing personal, but it's the wrong person. Please hang up. Sandy, okay. SLP, that's it, okay.
Please identify yourself.
Richard Lobel, Sheldon Lobel. Hi, Richard
Okay.
Lobel.
Okay. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony for this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Okay, proceed. Go ahead, Richard.
That's correct. So Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant.
Okay, go ahead.
I do.
Oh, you're listening to your YouTube video, please turn it off so you can hear us in real time.
Okay, I've done so.
Hi, okay.
Hi.
So please speak. Go ahead.
Chair, we listened to the comments at the executive session with regards to the application. The applicant has submitted a brief with respect to the fact that we believe that no abandonment or recoupment took place on the site. The chair and the commissioners have discussed that. We note the chair is citing to Deo versus Hagen with regards to a statement regarding the time that passes that might indicate or constitute abandonment. Actually, that case, importantly, was not a vested rights case. It was a case which was granted or which was contemplated for both a variance and special permit for the use of a gas station and a boarding house. And in that case, the abandonment which took place was basically 20 years of no activity on the site, except for an occasional visit by the owner of the property. And so that case is more akin to a case where, I'm sorry, we okay?
Yeah, no, never mind, sorry.
Okay, good. So that case is more akin to a case where if you have a non-conforming use, as for example, pursuant to Article 5 of the zoning resolution, that you would have a statutorily mandated period after which you could not reactivate a discontinued use. That's not the case here. Here, we have obviously a vested rights case, which was most recently granted in 2014 with the provision that the applicant would be permitted to build through 2016. So we've listened to the chair and the board's comments. And importantly, I think that most of the commissioners, if I'm not mistaken, support the fact that there is no abandonment which had occurred at the property, with the understanding that there's a concern over the actual willingness and ability of the applicant here to build. Because frankly, there's two things to consider here. One is you have a site which, as was mentioned by the commissioners, is and has been an eyesore on the community. And more importantly, in the current environment, you now have an environment which most of us have never heretofore experienced, where you're going to have mounting economic problems, including ones which pertain to active construction sites, which may become stalled construction sites. So in that regard, I had a discussion with my applicant immediately prior to this hearing, and my applicant actually is able to speak today. I don't know whether or not, they may not be in on the Zoom call, they may be able to call in by phone, but they basically, it's not a matter of whether or not they can build here, it's how quickly they can build. My applicant is a construction firm. They are involved and have been involved for 2 generations in numerous projects in the city of New York. With regards to their committed intent to do this, they have been spending tens of thousands of dollars continually on the ability to build on the site. And moreover, as recently as yesterday, we're on a conference call with 10 parties in order to demonstrate exactly how they can move forward on the site. There are ECB violations on the site. They also have an ECB attorney who they've been consulting with the understanding that the board would not grant absent a determination and addressing those ECB issues. They are ready and prepared to do so. So importantly, in this climate, given what's going on and given the challenges in construction in general, the reason we felt it was so important for my applicant to attend the hearing today and listen in, and again, I'm unsure as to whether or not they're calling in. I don't see them on the Zoom conference call.
Richard, I just want to say we have 3
Yes.
waiting, all with telephone numbers, and
Okay, good.
maybe you could, the person listening who is the correct telephone number, if they could text,
Yes.
so we know which one, because I have 3 phones
Sure.
waiting, one with the last digit 806, another 099, and the last 800. So one of those 3, or maybe all of them, are related
Yes.
to your project. If they
So 099 is Rocco Basile. He is the applicant here. He's a principal at Avo Construction. There he is. I see him on the screen. And he's currently muted, but to the extent that he can be sworn in by Ms. Matias, I'm sure that
Okay.
you can't do that. Okay.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, good. So
Hello.
Rocco is now available for testimony.
Hi, this is Rocco Basile.
Hello. Thank you for calling in.
I also want to let you know that I've asked Mark Hertz, who's handling the ECB violations for us, to be on the line with us as well.
Do you know what his phone number is? Either last digit 806 or 800?
Hang on a second.
If the
He is
806 is 806 is Jason Blauvelt, who is another principal at Avo. So
right.
I'm
So
assuming
must be the other one.
it's the other one.
and
Yes.
please, so everybody's been admitted. Please, everyone, turn off your YouTube video because we get feedback and then we can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Good. Please go. Everyone's been admitted, and you can ask when you want us to. Actually, I'll unmute everyone. Please understand that one at a time speaking. So Mr. Basile now has the floor.
Hi, guys. Just to give you a little background, we are a 2nd generation construction company, real estate development company. So I actually was listening in earlier on the review, and yeah, these are hard times, and we went through 2008, so we kind of understand what it's going to look like, the landscape for the next few years. And, we got through it we worked hard and got through 2008. This is going to be a lot easier for us because we have a lot less projects on the horizon. But this is one project that we are committed to.
Mm-hmm. Right. Did you
And
want?
as Rich, just to elaborate on that, as Rich said, we have already hired architects, engineers. We've hired Rich, so we're already vested into this project, and we spent a lot of money so far up to this date.
I hate to interrupt, but I don't believe that the officers were sworn in.
No, it's an A case. We don't swear in A cases. Sorry. So, okay, did you want one of the other people who called in to speak as well?
Yeah, so if you want to speak about the ECB violations, I know that was a concern for you guys. I have Mark Hertz, who's our attorney, who handles all our ECB violations, on the phone with us to explain to you what the process is going to look like once we take over the site.
Okay, great. Mr. Hertz?
Good morning, Mark Hertz. Let me just correct the statement. I'm not an attorney. I'm a violation expediter. My office has been doing this for 33 or 34 years. I'm sorry, I don't recall. We represent people in front of ECB, which is now not known as ECB, which is now known as OATH, Office of Administrative Tribunals and Hearings, which is currently closed primarily. And ECB penalties are respondent name specific. They ride with the respondent name. They don't ride with the property, which means that while building department and fire department ECBs require certificates of correction. That means, in fact, telling the city that you in fact corrected the physical problem, and there's also the penalty. So, as a new owner, the new owners will be responsible to correct the physical problem, to do whatever repairs are necessary, or if they do a demolition, to demolish the building, and then we'll certify correction. But the penalties are not the responsibility of anyone but the respondent names. And the respondent names on here are, there was Eckford Street Development. The penalties are in the name of TCJ Construction and Eckford Greenpoint LLC. So they would not attach to the new owner, the penalties. Only the correction would attach to the new owner. And before they get a final CFO, they would have to correct the physical problems and certify correction with the Department of Buildings.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Can you give us something in writing to that effect, or maybe even cite if you have access to the code or something that actually explains that way, and this would maybe. Yeah. Go ahead.
I can give you of council letters that I have from ECB dated, you pardon me, but one is dated October 22nd, 1996 from the then of council of ECB, Raymond Scanlon, and an updated handwritten fax that was sent to me by Jim Macron, who was the of council to ECB September 13th, 2006. I could probably pull out from the New York City Charter, Section 1404, saying that these penalties are in personam, not in rem. The penalties. I'm not talking about the corrections.
Right. Okay. Fair. That's very good. Okay. I learned something. Okay. Okay.
My pleasure. I don't know who I'm talking to, but it's my pleasure to talk to you.
I'm one of the commissioners, Marjorie Perlmutter, Chair of the BSA. Thank you for calling in. We appreciate it.
I have been before you at other times in reference to other properties. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you. Okay.
Thank you.
A person calling in also. Do you want him to speak, Mr.?
Jason Blauvelt. Jason, is there anything you wanted to add, or has Rocco?
I think Rocco covered it, but if there are any more questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So any commissioners have questions, comments, anything? Okay. All right. So, okay. So I think, given that the substance, and please, commissioners, if you have anything you wanted to add to that, given that the substance of it is that the majority of the commissioners seem to think that there is no abandonment, and given the circumstances these days, I'm much more sympathetic than I might have been a little earlier. And given the testimony by the three people who called in on behalf of the applicant that they actually have a team of people working on this, even now under these circumstances, I think we could close the hearing and then ask Mr. Lobel to please submit responses to the question. So in other words, kind of what are the plans, to the extent you can possibly have plans under this time, and for the applicant's representatives, that's the question. To the extent you can possibly have plans over this time, please lay them out. And for our own council to make note of what we're on the eve of. So in future, everyone is aware of that when they read a resolution in 5 years. I assume you'll have to be back. Hopefully not. Maybe you'll be one of the really lucky ones who actually proceeds. That would be quite amazing. Okay, so is everyone okay?
Chair,
Yeah,
just one moment. So the plans as far as kind of the applicant's program for how they intend to proceed with construction.
correct.
Okay,
And
that's fine. Happy to do that.
okay, and then to include the information that Mr. Hertz talked about in terms of how the ECB violations work. And I think that was everything, right? Anything? Oh, Commissioner Otley Browner has her hand up. I am unmuting her. There you go.
Could you also address who will take care of the tax liens that were sold?
Yes, we've already consulted with counsel, and we're happy to include that in our response.
Thank you.
Okay. So any other things from the other commissioners? Okay, so in that case, I'm going to unmute the commissioners and ask for a motion to close, and then we'll set a decision date as soon as possible in the future after those, and a submission date for those. Okay, giving you adequate time, just understanding our situation or time wise. Okay. All right, so for a motion to close. Tony, you're muted. There we go. Okay, go
For the
ahead.
motion to close, Chair Perlmutter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much all for dialing in. I'm gonna unmute Mr. Lobel. Oops, unmute. There we go.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Chair.
Thank you, commissioners.
Is a schedule being set now, or that's going to be relayed to us?
Work on the schedule, maybe hopefully today or in the next day.
Okay.
And then we'll send you what the decision date is and the submission dates, okay?
Excellent. Chair, commissioners, thank you for your time. We appreciate it, particularly in these trying circumstances.
Yes, thank you very much for calling in, very helpful.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Zoning calendar, next item 2016-4264 BZ, 194 Moffett Street, Brooklyn. Okay, Sandy's calling in.
Yeah. Okay, can unmute Ms. Ignatiu. There we go.
Hi.
Hi, please.
Hi.
Name.
Good morning, Sandy Anagnostou, representing the applicant.
All right, let me swear you in. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to the board member questions?
I do.
Please proceed.
So I heard the comments during the review session earlier. And in terms of the A finding uniqueness, the narrowness of the site, the vacancy, along with the history of occupancy and development of the site, all contribute to the uniqueness of this site. The two lots were previously occupied by 2.5-story with basement residences, which were demolished in the 1960s. And we submitted the tax photographs, the 1940 tax photographs, which show that. So all of the history of development makes the site inherently unique. And along with the fact that it's the only vacant lot on that block front on Moffett Street, and the only vacant lot of that size. And it's completely surrounded by residential uses which makes it very challenging to develop an as of right development. So this site is burdened by the fact that they have to comply with the zoning resolution for an M11 zoning district, yet it's very narrow to be able to accommodate a manufacturing use. And we illustrated that in the plans that we submitted, which shows the truck requirements based on standard requirements. It's very inappropriate for a manufacturing use. You'd have to have larger floor plates. The maneuverability is just not there. Plus, this is a very quiet residential street. Just to have loading and unloading or any type of manufacturing use is not appropriate there. Similarly, the commercial use, and I won't get into the rents, Barbara Cohen will address the issues regarding costs and rents, which were brought up. But the site for a commercial use, first of all, the absence of commercial uses in the area says a lot. There's only one site which is comparable to this one further up the block, which we identified on the maps in the uniqueness study. And that was used as an auto repair shop. And I believe it's now being used as a sheet metal manufacturing use. And that's on block 3447, lots 23 and 24, which are used in conjunction with each other. And actually, out of all the undersized and vacant lots in the manufacturing district, those two lots which I identified are the only ones that are comparable to our site. All other manufacturing uses are on much larger lots. And we even identified parking lots in the uniqueness study and in the map. And a lot of those parking lots are used in conjunction with other lots. They're either in common ownership or they're used together, such as there's a large lot storage of school buses, but that's not even on Moffett Street. That's within the 1,000 feet radius, but not on this block. So we feel the site is very unique. In terms of neighborhood character, yes, there are 1 and 2 family homes here, but there are also multiple dwellings on this block. In fact, if you look at the map, there are 10 multiple dwelling, actually 11 on the block, 10 of which are 6-unit buildings and 1 which is a 6 units and commercial. That's a mixed use building. And then there, within the manufacturing zone, there are 2 additional multiple dwellings, 1 with 12 units and another 6-unit multiple dwelling. So this is just not exclusively 1 and 2 family homes. There are many lots here that are multiple dwellings. Across the street in the R6 zoning district, there are quite a few multiple dwellings. And in fact, directly across from the site is a 4-story building, which is currently under construction. And I submitted recent photographs showing that. You may have not had a chance to see that, but that was just to supplement our neighborhood study and the land use maps that we already submitted. So there's a mix of not just 1 and 2 family homes. There are definitely multiple dwellings here of 6 units or more. We also submitted a streetscape elevation and in addition to the neighborhood study to show what the building would look like in context to the adjacent residences. And we were very thoughtful about matching and making something that would complement the adjacent buildings, and we brought the building down significantly from 4 stories was our original proposal to 3 stories. Just in response to the board's concern that this building scale was not appropriate for this location. But the residential use is very much appropriate, and a commercial use or manufacturing would have been developed here decades ago. If it was appropriate, this building would not sit there, this vacant property would not sit there for so many decades. Something would have been built there, but nothing was. The fact is, nothing was built there since the 60s when the existing residences were demolished. And really, the 2-story and basement building, because a basement is considered a story, that's equivalent to a 3-story building, which is what we're requesting here. In terms of the unit mix and layout, I heard the comments from the vice chair, and we'll look at that, but that's just something that the owner feels this is the type of mix that he would be able to rent in this area. And that's what he feels would make a feasible project for him, that he'll be able to make a reasonable return on.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Otley Brown, who has had her hand up for a while.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Hi. I
Hi.
just wanted to say that there are 2 separate findings, I think, that you were addressing, and then you went into a third finding, but we kind of didn't settle the A finding yet. And so the conversation about the multi-dwelling versus the 1 and 2 family homes is the conversation for the character finding, and then ultimately for the E finding. But what I wanted you to do was discuss the uniqueness while taking into account that the lots with parking use on them or open recreation should also be considered as if they're vacant, because to me, those are open area uses that property owners try to have on their vacant lots without having to lay out any money and investment for it, and then tell us that you would meet the uniqueness finding, given that information.
Okay, I see. But I believe even those parking lots, but I'll double check, even the lots that we identified as parking lots, I believe, but I'll check the data, are actually wider than the site, but I'll check.
Okay. Okay. And then I wanted to just say that when you look at the block and you look at some of the other uses, whether there are 2 families or multifamilies, the issue is that if you are able to make a hardship finding, the idea is that the variance tended to make you whole and not put you in a better position than your neighbors. So if the neighbors are 1 and 2 family, two stories plus a basement, then that's say giving the multifamily, giving a variance for a multifamily building puts you building in a better position than the neighbors, and that's not what a variance is supposed to be doing. That's my thinking about that. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Shondo, her hand up, and I see Commissioner Otley Brown raised her hand again.
So I just want to be reminded, I was looking through the documents, what was the reason for these buildings to be demolished? Was there a violation or demolition order that was made by the city? If you could remind me of that. And just for me to get the historic fact, and just to go back to include some of these vacant lots. And this is something I had looked into, and I think, and that's why I didn't raise it in my comments, because, but when I was looking at these lots that were being used as open space recreation and parking, individually they may be small, but many of them are under single ownership and are being used by the same owner for the same purposes. So I think that also is something should be clarified when doing the analysis as to which are under single ownership, which are under multiple ownership, and how that also is another factor.
I think though that her study does show used in tandem, whether they're actually shown under common ownership, it does show that this is the parking lot for the neighboring use, et cetera, like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at table 3 and some of the others, so maybe a consolidated, they're in different locations, so consolidate all that information and provide that. You're right.
Okay, and now I'm going to recognize Commissioner Otley Brown. Wait a second, wait a second. Where is it? Can you hear now?
Hello?
There we go.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, I wanted to address the multifamily, 1 and 2 family for the character finding. And I just wanted to say that, yes, your study did show that you had multifamily dwellings, but those were not on Moffett Street block face that we're looking at. They tended to be corner lots and lots that were on the avenues and the wider streets, which were better able to absorb that density in terms of appearance. If you just focus on the Moffett Street block fronts that this property actually fronts on, those are largely 1 and 2 family homes. And as Commissioner Shetta suggested, it would be very helpful to know the FAR ratios of those homes and the actual square footage of those homes in trying to figure out what would make your property on the same footing, put it on the same footing as the other homes directly around it, as opposed to going for the homes that are on the corner or around the corner on another block.
Right. Okay. Fair.
May I address that?
Yeah, sure.
So actually there are 3-story, 6-family multiple dwellings on Moffett Street on the subject block, and they're located on, you could see them on the land use map and also in the tables which we submitted. But I can clarify that in our submission, but those lot numbers are lot 30, lot 31, lot 32, lot 33, lot 34, and lot 35. Those are all on Moffett Street. They're not on the corner. They're on the actual street. Also, the zoning district boundary is 30 feet away. It runs in the center line of Moffett Street. So across the street are other 3-family homes, a 4-story multi-family building, which is under construction now. So it's not exclusively a neighborhood or a block with 1 and 2 family homes. There's a mix, and not just on the corners. It's actually on the same block front as this site on the same block. Also, we did submit data regarding the FAR and square footage, but we did it for the entire 1,000-foot radius. We can narrow it down, just clean it up, just put the information for that particular block so that you can do the comparison between our site and the FARs of the existing buildings. But we did provide it in the uniqueness study and all the Pluto data. We have the FAR, the square footages, building frontage, lot width, year built, and etc. Number of stories, number of dwelling units. But we can do, if it's clearer, we can just focus on our block.
Yes. But so for one is, you need to focus on what's in the M11, not in the R6.
Yes. Right. That's, I just brought that up to give a context of what's directly across the street, but our analysis only looked at the multiple dwellings in the M11 zoning district. Okay. We did provide photos just to show the character of, the street immediately across and within 1 block away. Also, there are quite a few manufacturing sites that are actually larger than the subject lot, which are for sale for development sites. So this area is changing. Even those manufacturing sites, and I noted, I recently went there, I noted at least 3 of them that are for sale, and they're much larger sites. So this area is changing. And the particular street is a quiet street that's not, it's not appropriate for commercial use. Doctor's office, we looked at community facility, we looked at doctor's office. I can have Barbara, she can speak more about that in terms of cost and how this wouldn't be a viable project. But just one other thing, going back to the vice chair's question about what happened to those buildings, based on our research, there was a demolition permit from 1960. I had the number, I can't find it right now, but so based on our research, there was a fire, and in the docket book, we were able to find this demolition permit number. So I suspect they were unsafe buildings and they ordered them to be demolished. And that's the history of it.
Okay, so there are a number of commissioners who want to speak. I just wanted to do your analysis. I did find in the uniqueness study, the land use map that shows what are 1 and 2 family versus multifamily and using different colors. But a multifamily is 3 or more units. So what we're talking about is comparing the number of units that you're proposing to the number of units that's typical of the block. So please clarify on that. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Shanda, who's had her hand up for a long time, and then Commissioner Shetta, and then Otley Brown.
Thank you. I located that table, and my question to that is, I think we need to be careful about how we're using the data. So pretty much all the multiple dwelling units that was mentioned, located on those lots are consistently 4,875 square feet on lots that are 25 feet wide. So an FAR wise, they might be 1.95. That's because the lot sizes are smaller. But I think we should focus on the floor area, which is 4,875 square feet. Because if you look at, and with that same thing, the 2 family homes that are located on this block, they are also the lot sizes are 16 feet and 20 feet, and the building floor area is 2,200 square feet. So it's a difference of 4,875 square feet in multifamily dwellings on 25-foot wide lot versus 2,200 square feet, 2 family homes on a 20-foot wide lot.
Okay, thank you.
And what is being proposed is 5,729 square feet. So there is a lot of room to play with, and we can bring that floor area down should everybody be in agreement with the uniqueness finding.
Okay, thank you. Then Commissioner Shetta.
I hear the applicant referring to some adjacent buildings that they might have like 6 and 7 and sometimes 8 dwelling units. I'm not sure if any of these were a BSA case. I don't believe so. And on the other hand, they are proposing, initially they started, I believe, with 10 units. Now they are, I believe, 8.
Yeah.
But like I said, on the 3rd floor, if you look at the layout, the apartment in the back, it has 2 rooms. The living room is 9 feet. The bedroom is just 8 feet and 2 inches. If you look at the 2 bedrooms on the front, 9-7 and 8-10. These are like very tiny rooms. I don't know what is the reason for increasing the number of units. I would be like more understanding if they like beef up these rooms a little bit to make them like more feasible and just reduce the number of units. this is one thing. I didn't like hear any feedback regarding the cost for the remediation. I'm not sure again why they have 50 grand in the equation. So any feedback on this?
Okay, um, Cohen's response, but yeah, Ms. Agnostou, I'm sorry. Matt, you want to respond to those comments before I go to Commissioner Otley Brown?
Well, the remediation costs, that was based on a cost that we received from the environmental consultant, because you need to provide clean fill, first take out the contaminated soil and then dispose of it and bring in clean fill. And that's the cost attached to that. I can have Ms. Cohen respond to all the questions regarding the costs, and because I know you have other questions regarding rents and et cetera.
Yeah. So, but just to pick up that fill question, in your proposed, you're providing a cellar. So why do you need to replace the contaminated fill with clean fill? Once it's off, it's off. And my impression isn't that you have to dig that deep on the site.
The DEP required us, we did an EAS phase 1, phase 2, and all the remediation action plan, and the DEP required us. They reviewed the plans and said that it was required.
So, so that's the thing, required what? So if DEP says remove to level X, let's say 10 feet, you have a cellar. So your cellar requires the removal of 10 feet. So then what to put fill back for? So it's a disconnect between the removal and the actual proposed project. On your as of rights, you're proposing slab on grade, which is why one reason why I said, well, if you should provide a cellar which is rentable and has clear story, that's a way of getting more, and excavating the cellar in the rear yard, that's a way of getting more viable rental space, since you have to excavate for remediation, then just keep the hole in the ground and don't fill it up. Anything else you wanted to add on that, Commissioner Shaita? I'm going to go to Commissioner Otley Brown.
No, I just want to say that I haven't looked at the EAS, but I didn't see any mention in the statement of facts that there has been like an environmental issue on the site. That so if it was any issue, environmental issue, they should have mentioned this in the statement of facts, so we could be alerted for that.
Excuse me, we actually did mention it in the previous statement of facts, and the board had directed us to remove it, and we submitted a revised statement of facts because not sure, they said this would be unique to all sites in the manufacturing zone, but actually the site had to undergo extensive environmental review and costly time-wise and monetarily. So I think it is relevant.
Can you give us like a breakdown for the 50 grand you're including in your cost estimate?
I believe we did, but I'll look at that.
Okay.
I didn't see that, but if you have it, you don't have to resubmit it.
All right, I'll check, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify the comment about the environmental at the last hearing was they had to review because it's a variance application. And so the DEP then looks at the variance application, and almost every site is subject to a RAP and a CHASP automatically once it goes to DEP review. So there's always some kind of contamination just from sitting around, you know, like kind of breathing the air, unfortunately. So, and so we said, your site isn't uniquely experiencing a spill from a gas station or anything. It's it's like every site in the city contaminated to such some extent, so you can't include that in your hardship costs. And so, yeah, the same way as we're saying you're not close enough to the railroad in order to include in a hardship cost. So I'm going to recognize Commissioner Ali Brown.
She's still muted.
She's still muted.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to go back to the uniqueness study and say that those lots that you had spoken about that were multiple dwellings, those were actually closer to the corner. They were within 150 feet of the corner. And yes, they had a 1.95 FAR, but the homes that are surrounding your lots have a 1.1 and a 1.0 FAR. And I think you should be looking at a project that's smaller, on a smaller scale.
Okay, we'll look at that. In terms of, I just want to make a comment about the environmental. The DEP actually did identify, because of the prior use on the site as an auto repair and storage of vehicles, they identified a condition specific to this site. And that's why they required us to do all the phase 1 and phase 2 and all of these studies. And we are within 200 feet of the MTA right of way. But we didn't even attach a cost to that. We just brought up, and we submitted the maps in our last submission, which shows the proximity, but we didn't even attach a number to that. We're just saying that's just one other thing that review that's required. But yes, Commissioner Ali Brown will look at that. We'll look at the, like I said, we do have the data in the uniqueness study and the Pluto data, but we'll look at it again and focus primarily on that block in terms of the FAR and do a comparison.
Okay, and Commissioner Shetta had his hand up. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
on the TA issue, I mentioned this during the review session, and I'm gonna repeat it again. I have done numerous sites that are much closer to the TA. For a site like this, the cost that's gonna be burdening this site is gonna be $150. So if you wanna include, I'm not sure if the TA increased the review fees for the sites, but until like a year back, the fees was like just $150. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take the boring location plan, submit it to the TA. They will look at it probably in 2 weeks or so. They charge you $150. You get letter of no impact. That's all. So don't put this like adjacency to a TA structure or a TA line in play, because it's not gonna fly. So this is totally irrelevant.
Okay, okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, Ms. Anagnostou, would you like to add
Yeah.
anything?
I believe Barbara Cohen may be waiting. Maybe she wants to address your comments regarding the financials.
So there are two people in the waiting room, one with the
Oh.
last digit 755 and one with the last digits 290. You know which one is Ms. Cohen?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so I'm seeing in our waiting room two people waiting, one with last digit 755 and one with last digit 290. Going to admit 755, you need to be calling in about what's the address here? Sorry, 194 Moffett Street. That's calendar number 2016-4264-BZ. If this is not a case that you're related to, please hang up. Otherwise, I'm going to admit caller with phone number 755.
Hello?
State your name, please. Hello?
Okay, it's Maurice Biellet.
Sorry, please turn off your YouTube and then,
So actually, it's not my number. It's the other one. You should dial. You should.
but you need to hang up, sir. Please hang up. Okay, so,
Barbara?
Barbara?
Yes, yes, I'm here. I'm gonna just close the sound of the YouTube. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, but before you go on, please, the person who called with phone number 755, please hang up if this is not your case, please. You should have been dialed in or in the waiting room. Thank you. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Cohen.
I have to swear in.
Yes,
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
yes, I do.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, just to go through a few comments and clarify a couple of things. Yes, as of right scenarios, the full rent of 3,200 square feet is does exist. It's not the usable. As far as the change in the average rent for the as of rights from what was 26 to 22, I had stated on my revised report, page 19, that a correction was made on comparable number 2, and so when that correction was made, the average adjusted accordingly. Let's see. As the environmental details are actually in my report in the cost section, and that's laid out. I don't remember, we'd have to go back to look at the details, but if there is something more concerning beyond urban fill, which we know is present everywhere, and no one sort of says urban fill needs something special. It's always when there is something in particular that needs to be removed, we'll have to just confirm that. The as of rights, there's no disposal because there's no cellar level in the 2 or 3 as of rights. So, and one of the reasons why that was done was to try to reduce the cost of the development, to make it as best as it can be. What else? If you do start to add cellars, obviously, in terms of the office idea, costs go up, and you can either and the rent is not going to be the same as what's above ground, so all of that has to come into play to get you the answer, which I expect not to work. The MTA discussion can be certainly toned down, and if it needs to be removed as a, just to remove, it was left in just as a factual issue. But no costs were applied because you can't, because they won't give you a cost or any, answer unless you start to construct. So that's the trouble with the NPA. Extra cost and time, of course, means more money too. What else? As far as the mix of the units, as Sandy said, certainly can look back and then also make sure that the market is the match for the mix. So that's very important. And what the rent really needs to be, given all the other development costs, and whether it's feasible from that standpoint. The other thing that either was overlooked or not really discussed in terms of how the commercial office, how the uniqueness of the site size that produces the product, the one-story commercial no cellar building, how does that then become a hardship in that scenario, I summarized what I provided in great detail in DeGraw Street in the appendix about the issue of the idea of the small commercial office building under 5,000 square feet, and where that product fits within the overall office market. And most importantly, in particular, when as you were talking about doctors' offices for the community facility and so on, you really have to go that extra step further to say, so who's the tenant, and who the tenant types, and the profile of the tenant, and how do they perceive this space, this small space at this location? That's the other part of the context, obviously. And the other part of the context, of course, is always, so what else is out there in terms of competition that puts this particular small space at a disadvantage of what else is available? And, we do these little interior layout really to determine the size of the company, of the employees that fit. And at this size, you squeeze in the 20, based on the standards of the office space, and, you get to the 20-person firm, and you say, all right, so who are these people? They're certainly not the startups that are with 1 to 3 people who would benefit and be able to pay and use the WeWork shared work, facility with the all the amenities, and it's not for a company they're 20 people now, but they're in the growth mode, and will be 30 people tomorrow. And so in that scenario, the turnover is more, the vacancy is more, and so on. And so I think at this size, it's too small for the 20-person firm, and it's too big for the startup. And so I think all those factors all come down to the tenant and their requirements and how they perceive the space. And I go through that in the appendix to really define how the size produces the space that is either a fit for a good portion of the market or not. And the answer is that it doesn't fit. It's too big for some and too small for others. What else? I think, those are the sort of, the key highlights, I think.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Otley Brown, and I also have some questions. Unmute. It's not listening to me.
I think she muted herself.
I muted myself, sorry, because my dog was barking. Okay, I just wanted to say in response on your community facility lease decrease, the decrease from the previous report was because now you are deducting for time and asking prices, whereas before you weren't, and that really makes up the difference. And I'm not sure necessarily that was a mistake, or if that was just a way of subbing in another thing to bring the rent down in response to other comments we made somewhere else. So I'm not inclined to accept it. And then I also wanted to make a comment about your office development. And I know you've said this many times, and I know that we've been really resistant to accepting the idea that these smaller properties would not be good for offices because it's not a fit for 20 people, it's not a fit for 10 people, and there are very few people. The issue really is behind the argument you're making is that citywide, basically 32 feet wide is not good for office. You're basically talking about a building typology that doesn't work for office that really isn't unique to this site. But it's really kind of a market issue. It would apply anywhere in the boroughs where you had a 32-foot wide lot. And so therefore, I don't know if it's a good argument to make in a variance case. And that's why in every case that you have that you make that, you do get pushback from myself, you get pushback from the chair and some of the other commissioners, because if we were to accept that argument, basically we would be opening the door for everybody with 32 feet wide to come in and say, we'd rather put housing here. And that's not what the variance process is about. It really should be talking about the hardships that are unique to this site that you cannot claim everywhere else. And a market argument you can claim throughout the city. You can make that argument that 32 feet wide is not an optimal office space. You can make that in every single borough. You can make that argument. And that's what the problem is with that argument. It's not that we don't see it and understand it and say, wouldn't this do better if it was 75 feet wide? We all know that. Larger is better for an office building. But there are small lots in this society, and there are small lots that are zoned commercially. And so smaller buildings will be on those smaller lots that are zoned commercially.
And I wanted to add to that, which is something that really does need to be addressed. So, which I mentioned in my comments before, DeGraw Street is 35 feet wide, and the board found that it was actually a good site for a cleverly designed office building. And, it happened to have an architect who showed us that a very good project could be built there. And I'm trying to understand what the difference is, if the 3 feet makes any difference. And one of the things that DeGraw did was it divided the front and the back with a little courtyard so that the back wall was lit. And then the other thing it did is it took the floor area that was not used in that courtyard and moved it to a second floor, so that essentially you had second floor conference space or private offices and so on that face the front. And then of course it took advantage of mechanical deductions. And in terms of the remediation, I look again at if you actually excavate, and which is not something that DeGraw Street did, but it's something that I see very often in architecture offices, where they excavate the cellar and they go out all the way to the backyard. And now it's not less valuable space because it opens into light. I mean, it opens into a ground floor rear yard. So it's actually, so I think all of those things really need to be addressed to prove to me that this site wouldn't be viable at 32 feet wide. I actually don't understand the difference between this one and DeGraw in terms of the hardship driven by the width. So now Commissioner Shanda had her hand up first, I believe. Yeah, and then Sheta. Okay, so I'm going to unmute her.
Yes, the argument between this project and DeGraw based from the commission is kind of consistent. And I think there is a difference between the DeGraw and this site. Firstly, this site is absolutely solitary residential. There isn't any manufacturing use, as in DeGraw Street. We had seen a mix of manufacturing and residential in the block and in the surrounding block. Here, it's kind of the opposite. It's more residential with very few manufacturing uses thrown, and that too mostly along the edges, along the railway tracks. With that said, I think though it is being argued that this is a market issue and everybody will come, if that's the case, are we then saying that a small lot should then try to build an as of right and prove that they have failed in their ability to be an as of right commercial use or an as of right manufacturing use, and then seek the variance? Because first of all, I don't even think the bank will lend them the money, because they have to first go to the bank and justify that they can build the loan that they're seeking, that they can build something that would be viable and can be used. So right off the bat, there would be a block there. And should they miraculously be able to make it, they will not be able to rent it out, because otherwise, if there was the case, then many of these vacant lots, these parking lots, would then become commercial office spaces. And some of them are combined lots. So some of them are under joint ownership. So they could even fetch a bigger space. So there might be a reason why the land use is looking the way it is, and why some of the uses are, some of the vacant sites are being fallow. So I don't think we can use a very blanket statement and say then everybody will come. Each case is tested and on their individual merit, and not constantly apply the market issue all the time. Especially, I don't think in this case it works, because the surrounding uses just prove that.
Well, I personally, I think that the reason that things lay fallow is because economic conditions don't encourage construction, and then economic conditions encourage construction. So unfortunately, we're entering into a discouraging time. But up until a month ago, or maybe 5 months ago, we had an encouraging time, and that's why people building whatever the use is. So that has to do with economics that sort of affects market conditions. But I'm going to recognize Commissioner.
Can I just say, I agree that the economics, and when I do mean the economics, it does also mean who is lending for these projects. And this is not looking at the current situation, as you said, it's looking at what was 5 months ago when we were like, stock market was going all crazy. So yes, I think we need to be cognizant of that also.
Commissioner Sheta?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very quickly, two things. Number one, yes, I acknowledge that the nature of the block between the difference in the nature of the block between this block and the big row is this block is mainly residential, but that doesn't mean that they are forced somehow to build residential. And or in other words, if they build something else like a doctor office, it's not gonna work. I'm not sure how to swallow that. This is number one. Number two, I believe now we as a board and the applicant are standing at two different extreme locations. They are asking for something that's too much, and if we think to like grant something, I believe it should be much less. We need to move this case forward. I'm afraid that this is gonna turn into another dig row, and then the outcome, you know more, probably you know better than me about the outcome in the other case. So I would urge the applicant to like cooperate and move this case forward, and stop arguing about the yeah, we cannot go to the TA because we cannot start construction. No, the TA does not ask you to start on construction, so they show you how much fees they're gonna charge you. This is incorrect. The TA asks you before you start construction to submit to them a site plan with the 2 holes that you're gonna make to start construction, the 2 borings. And based on reviewing this, they charge you $150, period, nothing else. And they gave you recommendations. In this case, I bet that the recommendation will be, you have no impact, go ahead. So the TA thing is not in play again for the 3rd time. The remediation thing, I'm not sure if they are digging down to 10 feet or whatever. All the fill will be disposed. The disposal fees are already counted in the construction. So I'm not sure what is the 50 grand remediation, special remediation cost that we're plugged in. Let's move this case forward if you want to get it done.
Okay, and Commissioner Shabeta?
I think all the commissioners agree that that a residential property would be nice here. It would fit in the character of the community, but that doesn't make it meet the findings. And I think that the applicant needs to get back and try to convince us that there's an A and there's a hardship. And I want to echo what Commissioner Otley Brown stated. There is a concern that every other application, that hundreds, we could be flooded by similar sized applicants saying that because of this, they have a hardship. Sandy, you need to separate yourself from that, and I really don't think that this conversation, this hearing that we're having now, is convincing me any further.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
If I could just add, I guess, is that all these, there are more than one factor that goes into determining the feasibility of the space. And I really think that sometimes we miss the tenant requirements and the context and location and competitive facilities that a particular site is up against. I think, you have to pull all these things together that influence, feasibility and its position. It's got to be within context. I don't think you can just pull out one factor and ignore all the other influencing factors that go into real estate development. So.
What happened?
We lost Marjorie.
No, she's muted.
Hello?
I'm still here, but I finished.
I'm still here.
Somebody unmute Marjorie? I don't know what happened.
Thank you for your patience. It appears that we're having some technical difficulties potentially.
I'll try to give her a call.
I mean, ultimately, we should sum up and see where we go next.
Hi, this is Carlo. Just hang for a second. We're working out a technical difficulty.
Oh, I'm back. I don't know why.
Yay!
So sorry, the internet decided to knock me out, which is one reason why I'm trying to keep these hearings shorter. This is actually way too long on these YouTube hearings, so we want to keep them at 2 hours. So I'm going to reduce the number of cases that we hear at each one of these because I was afraid of this technical problem. I think I may have also lost, let's see, we still have Sandy, right?
Yeah, Sandy and Barbara
Yes.
still online.
Apologies.
We're still here.
Oh,
It's okay.
So just to, what I was saying is that that in my own experience, having run small businesses, the businesses don't go from 20 to 30, and especially in the architecture world, they hold firmly. If you're in certain specialties, it's sort of 8 to 15, and that's just what they are for the life of the business. So this idea of anticipating, an enlargement to 30, that may be true for some, like, I don't know, .coms like Amazon and things like that. But when you need more space, you move. But most of the time you are renting spaces that are in the 2,500 to 3,000 square foot range. That's just, my experience has been, that's the entire market for people in my discipline. So that's kind of.
So should the applicant just seek one segment of the market and hope they
No, but
find
arguing
a
it,
small pool?
and I'm talking about small businesses. So small businesses often stay in that 10 to 15 to 20, and they don't get larger than that. So the idea of saying it's one segment, it's a segment of small businesses, right? But as Commissioner Otley Brown said, there are small buildings that have small businesses, and that's the way the city's always worked. If you, loft buildings all around Manhattan, just as an example, because I just happen to know them, they're subdivided into small offices all the time. So,
right. But now you're not even talking about location as an important thing, proximity to other retail services. I mean, you're sort of totally blocking out the context in which a site sits in, and how that also impacts the marketability, which I think is important.
this site,
I don't know. Okay.
it's near other businesses, and according to that, those businesses would be failing, and they're, arguably not under good times. Under bad times, prior good times. I just want to recognize Commissioner Shanda, and then I think we'll move on.
So just a couple of things. I think the last 2 weeks have definitely taught us how to work from home. And a lot of these small companies, many of them, and I know that for a fact from many of my friends and who have been part of startups, pretty much don't have a base. They work from home. And now there's a whole new website that's available where you can, many of these restaurants that only are active during night times, they actually lease out their restaurant eating area during the daytime for you to hold meetings if you need to, when you need to. So there are people who will go to these restaurant spaces and have their meetings occasionally. And it's a matter of like 10 people, 5, whatever number you have. And you use that as your meeting space, and then you go into your own respective apartments and do the work. So I do think there is a very big difference from what we are seeing today and will see going forward. I do think I agree with Ms. Cohen in terms of we need to look at all these other factors.
Okay, anybody else want to add anything?
I'd like to make a couple of points, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the commercial use, there's a complete lack of commercial uses in this area. We identified one building which is actually not occupied, it's vacant, and there's a for rent sign on it. And the only other one is actually not commercial. It's a sheet metal manufacturing or auto repair. Those were the history of uses. Commissioner Shabeta brought up some items, which I'm not sure in terms of moving this project forward. We've done everything we could. We referred it to the MTA, requesting a letter of no effect. We haven't even received a response yet. But we're not even claiming that. We actually removed that discussion from claiming it as a uniqueness. And the remediation costs are included, but the MTA costs are not, although we foresee having to undergo this review. So I'm not sure that that's not delaying anything, and we've done everything to move this project along.
Oh, I don't think he was saying delay. I think that probably the comments were, we've been having trouble about the size of this project, so that the reduction to 8 units seems that it wasn't a big enough reduction.
Okay, so in terms of that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but once we establish the uniqueness, the A finding and the B finding, I'm feeling that apart from the parapet wall, which could be a little lower, we removed an entire story and brought the height of the building down significantly. So I feel that maybe the board is a little more comfortable with the number of stories, but not so accepting of the dwelling, number of dwelling units and the layout and that mix.
It has to do with the floor area, which Commissioner Shanda explained. You're a 5,500 square foot range, and just looking around, or maybe that was Commissioner Otley Brown.
Yes.
And looking at the, comparing it to what we're seeing on the rest of the block, yours is a very big ask. And so your ask needs to be more in line with what the adjacent properties are. I was actually very surprised to see an 8-unit building in response to our comments last time. I expected to see a 3-unit building, which would be more in line with the size of the properties, because don't forget, you're building much deeper into your lot than the adjoining properties, even though you're arguably, somewhat close to the same height. So I think maybe there was a misunderstanding about not asking for more than what your neighbors have. The idea is to make you whole, not to make you 2 times than everyone else. But does anybody else want to add anything? Commissioner Sheda had his hand up and then he took it down. Anybody want to add anything to that? No? Okay.
But I have a comment though. But some of our neighbors are 6-unit buildings and they're 4,800 square feet on 25-foot wide lots. Our lot is 32 feet wide, and we're asking for a building that's 5,000 and, well, maybe about 1,000 square foot difference, but we are a wider lot. We're 32 feet wide as opposed to 25 feet wide. And that's on our block are
so you're
six,
almost 10 feet better off than those 25-foot wide lots. So why should you then get proportionately more floor area than they have? That's what the issue is. You need to look at what is the standard on the lots relative to their size, understanding that you're in a much better position than the 16-foot wide houses that were demolished, right? Now you've got a very large site, relatively speaking, which is why I still have trouble with this issue of hardship. And you shouldn't be better off than the 25-foot wide lot in terms of what you're asking. So I think maybe you and Ms. Cohen should sit down and talk about what this really means in light of DeGraw, and also in light of what's fair to ask as opposed to what your client wants. We understand your client wants highest, best, biggest, etc., but that's not the role of a variance. The variance is make you whole. That's all, not more than whole. Anybody want to add anything to that? Because I think it's time to.
Right, we will look at DeGraw. I'm only saying that based on our lot area, that of 32 lot width and lot area, that determines your floor area, which actually in an R6 equivalent, which we would look at the nearest residential district, would be much more could be built and is being built across the street. We're not asking for that. In fact, we reduced our original proposal. But our floor area is just a little bit more than the existing six dwelling unit buildings on the same block.
Okay, so you shouldn't be looking at an R6. You should be looking at what's adjacent properties. That's what we're looking at, right?
Right. We're looking at the adjacent properties on our block.
No, but adjacent means adjacent. What's next door to you, right? Why should you be better off than the people next door to you? That's the question. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Shetto, kept putting his hand up and then taking it down, and then Commissioner Shanda, who has her hand up.
I just wanted to save the board's time, but it sounds like the applicant is not willing to do so. They are talking about 6 units and 7 units. Are these BSA cases? If not, please do not bring them in. Look, like the chair said, look at the adjacent lots and see what they have. You shouldn't be favored because just your lot is vacant. This is number one. Number two, they grow, and I forgot, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. If you remember, if you remember, Chair, they had a uniqueness with the subsurface conditions. The grow had like groundwater issue. They had a subsurface condition issue with the strength of the soil. So they needed pile foundation. We don't have this here. The idea of like making up things like the TA thing, like the environmental thing, it's not gonna make us like, surrender at the end and grant something. If you, again, I'm talking about my position here. If you wanna move this forward, you should work on the floor area, bring him down. This is, the only thing that makes me sympathetic with this case is the nature of the block. But the grow is pretty much the same size, even worse because they have this uniqueness of the subsurface, and we didn't let it go. So just be mindful.
Right. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shanda, I'm unmuting you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to remind Ms. Ignacio, I think the last statement that she made is not helping her argument. What we are all saying is that if we get past the uniqueness, the total number of units that is being proposed is much more than what one sees in the neighborhood. The so-called the lots that Ms. Ignacio has identified, multiple dwelling units, at most they have 6, and small lots. I'm not saying that's the right way to go about it. On a 25-foot lot, we don't want to encourage a 6-unit home. So I mean, that's what the Pluto data is saying, because we're just, I mean, that's not impossible. That's just impossible. So something is wrong with the numbers there. But even if it is 6 units on a 25-foot wide lot, does not mean that's what we should be encouraging on a lot where residential use is not allowed. It has to be something that is more reasonable in terms of what the market and what the what seems livable, habitable. And so I don't think the argument of a 35-foot lot and therefore we should be allowed more floor area. Yes, you have that advantage, but that doesn't mean we let you go over the numbers that are showing here, 4,875. It has to be that or less, based on whether you get past the A, B, and then get to the C.
Right. And just to remind, this to correct or something maybe I didn't understand, it's a 32-foot wide lot, right?
Yeah, sorry, 32-foot, yeah.
5, and some of the other sites on this block or in the area are 25 feet wide.
Yeah, I'm looking at the multiple dwelling units that are 25-foot wide that have 4,875 square foot buildings. So if we were to apply any threshold as a starting point, it has to be that, and then maybe we can work down, but not higher than that.
Correct. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else want to add anything? I think we've probably, Commissioner Otley Brown raised her hand. Oops.
I just to say that for me, I would start with the 1 and the 1.1 FAR, which is directly surrounding the house on the mid block, and then work from there.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I feel like we're putting this property in a better position than the neighbors, and I don't think that's what a variance does. Okay, all right, so I think actually we've talked this one too long, and instructions, if you need further clarification, then I recommend that you reach out to your project manager, is Tony Matias, and so I think we'll set this on for continued hearing, but you should really be listening closely to these comments from the commissioners if you want to. And it's true that at a certain point, commissioners get frustrated with the case not adequately shifting character. And then that's how, for example, it was denied, and some others like that. So, so with that, I'd like to ask if there's anyone, members of the public, who would like to speak on this. Tony, if you could restate the dial-in number.
Sure.
And number.
It's on the screen, but okay.
Oh, it's on the screen. I'm sorry. Okay, so anyway, so if you're watching this on YouTube, then please, and you would like to speak in this case, please dial the number. Otherwise, we're going to move on and finish with the morning session. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for dialing in, Ms. Cohen and Ms. Agnostic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it. So say this.
Okay, so this concludes the public hearing for April 1st, the 10 a.m. session. We'll resume at 2 p.m. with the executive session and public hearing followed shortly thereafter for the April 1st, 2022 p.m. session. And those cases will be 2017-270 BZ, 1434 Utica Avenue, Brooklyn, 2018-15 BZ, 250 West 26th Street, Manhattan, 2018-91 BZ, 78 Leonard Street, Manhattan, 2018-137 BZ, 251-77 Jericho Turnpike, Queens, and 2018-145 BZ, 251-73 Jericho Turnpike, Queens. Those are the only cases that we are hearing this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, and see you at 2.
We're done? Yeah, you made it.